Welcome everybody to Redeemer's online campus. Today I have a very special guest, Father Robert Sullivan, who is one of the retired clergy here at Redeemer and a fan favorite for sure of our parishioners. And normally I do this as a Zoom cast, but we have the honor and privilege of having Father Sullivan here in the church in person. Welcome, Father Sullivan, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Father Wood. It's a great honor to be here.
It's great to have you here. So I'm going to start off. You've got a lot of stuff to talk about because you've had an incredible ministry and an incredible life that a lot of us don't know much about. But I want to start off with asking you, I want you to tell me about where you were born and about a little bit about your parents and your upbringing.
Okay. I was born in Philadelphia, and we lived there until I was 10 years old, and then we moved over to New Jersey, near Trenton. And by that time I had two little brothers. My father was a textile chemist, and my mother was an Army brat. Her father was a West Point graduate and a career officer in the cavalry. So they had some stations overseas, but mostly they were out in the western states. This was like over 100 years ago. So yeah. The West was still the Wild West. Yeah. And the cavalry came running in like they still do in John Wayne movies.
Wow.
Anyway, my grandparents were great storytellers and great fun to be with. And we belonged to Christ Church, Bordentown. Shall I get into that?
Sure.
Which is an Anglo-Catholic parish with a really, really beautiful building. And I was in Sunday school and an acolyte and belonged to the youth group.
So you are a born and bred Episcopalian from birth, and a born and bred Anglo-Catholic from birth too.
Yes.
Just like me. We're so similar, Father.
I know. Except I don't have a beard.
No, you don't have a beard. Mine might be gone by this weekend. We'll see. So what was...
I want to tell that.
Go ahead.
I really remember very vividly being with the youth group on a Sunday night in December when somebody came rushing in, all excited, and told us that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor.
Oh.
And so that really broke up the meeting and scared us all, and we went home. Then in May 1943, I turned 18 and graduated from high school and was drafted into the Army.
Wow. So did you served in the Army?
Yeah.
And where did you serve?
Well, first I got into ASTP, the Army Specialized Training Corps, where after basic training, you went to college and studied something that's specified by the Army that would make you of use to the Army afterward. So I had the basic training for 13 weeks at Fort Benning, Georgia, which was an awful place to be in the summer.
Yeah.
But we were all 18 and survived. And then my group all went to the University of Maine. And that was like going from hell to heaven. We just couldn't believe it. And we lived in fraternity houses and ate in the college dining room, went to classes, had lots of free time. There was a lovely Episcopal church in the next town, St. James, Old Town, where I went on Sundays. And on every Sunday, somebody would invite me home for Sunday dinner.
That's nice.
So, yes, it was very nice. So it all just seemed too good to be true, and really was, because after one term for 3 months, the Army could tell that the war would be over before we finished. So the program was ended, and we were all sent to fill up the ranks of the 26th Infantry Division, which was getting ready to go overseas. Shall I go home?
Please.
Okay. So we had several months of intensive combat training, and then sailed from New York, which was really, really exciting to me. There were 3 troop ships in the middle of the convoy, and then surrounded by dozens and dozens of freighters, and then outside the freighters were the destroyers that were protecting us from submarines. And after 2 weeks, we landed at Cherbourg in France, where the whole harbor was just total ruins. There were ships parts of ships blown up and everywhere. It was all like a real picture of what war was going to be like. And we were in a sort of tent camp for about 2 weeks, and then loaded into trucks and taken up to the front, which by that time was in eastern France, almost to the German border. And we relieved an outfit that had just taken up a lot of ground, and were dug in, and were holding it. So we just sort of occupied their foxholes, and then several times a day, there would be a huge artillery barrage of 88s from the German side. They're also called screaming mimes, because you would hear this whistling sound that got louder and louder, and then turned into a terrible scream before it exploded.
That's frightening.
Yes.
So were you in, what battle were you in? Was it a named battle, like the Bulge or anything like that?
We're coming to that.
Oh, well then, Father, let's go.
Are you going to ask me about, I used to say the collect from morning prayer every day when I woke up.
Yeah.
I went about, Almighty God, who has brought us safely to this new day, preserve us from all danger and suffering. I really did.
I was going to ask you about that. How were you able to maintain the sense of faith and connection to God while in battle?
And I honestly do remember just waking up one morning with sunshine. I'm sitting in the foxhole and thinking that, everybody I loved, I'm far, far, far from home, thousands of miles from everybody I love, and in real danger, and yet sort of carrying on cheerfully with all the people in the next holes. And I realized it was really just my faith in God. And I thought then that the greatest thing you could do in life would be to help other people come to faith in God. So I really kind of just remember that moment always.
So do you think that it was in that foxhole that you began to feel your call to the priesthood?
Maybe. More about that later.
Okay.
So then, a day or two after that, I just happened to be out of the hole when the first shell hit. Really got me, and I was thrown to the ground, unconscious, and sprayed with dirt, and had a huge gash in the back of my head where I was hit with shrapnel. And I was the first casualty in our outfit, so it was very exciting for everybody, especially for the medics, who finally got to do what they practiced doing before that. So, you get evacuated through all these different stations. And I finally ended up in a hospital in Nancy that night, where I got x-rayed and sewn up and put to bed. And the hospital had big wards with maybe 25 or 30 beds all along the walls. And during the night, every bed was filled. And during the night, there was an air raid. It seemed like there were not many planes at all, and they were in a different part of the town. But there was great panic in the ward, and people screamed for us to get under the bed. So we did that. And in the course of getting under my bed, I got kicked in the head by the person next to me, which opened up my wounds. And made me really sick at my stomach for some reason all night. Then the next morning, everybody is evacuated farther inland, except me. I was too sick to go. And then, so the whole ward was empty, except for me. And then by afternoon, it was all filled again with casualties. Then the second day, I was able to go in a hospital train to a hospital near Paris and stay there. And then after about a month, I came back to my outfit, and when I got there, there was not one person left that I knew. Everybody was either wounded, hopefully wounded, or was killed, which was a real revelation. And then we were like just walking every day through forest, and we didn't know it, but we were heading for what would be later known as the Battle of the Bulge. But fortunately for me, after about 5 days, I got trench foot, which is your feet swell up like big balloons, and it's from having your feet wet and too long. So that time I got evacuated to England and was there in a hospital for a month, and then went to a rehab center, which was nothing but trench foot people. And we had to play volleyball and go for long marches every day to get circulation going on our feet again. And this camp was next to a really pretty English village with a beautiful church. So I started going down to church every Sunday, and a nice lady invited me to tea, and she turned out to be the schoolmistress who lived with her husband in the schoolhouse right next to the church. And she had a daughter who taught at a school in England and would come home most weekends. And we just really hit it off very well. She was 10 years older, and it was nothing romantic, but we just enjoyed cycling and hiking. And I really, really liked this family. They were very, very good to me. And she confided that she was madly in love with a young farmer who lived in the village. And he was very nice and would often go with us, but never showed any signs of proposing a romance. Anyway, I came home when the war was over, and we kept corresponding. And she met somebody else, got engaged, and then the night before the big church wedding, the farmer came and told her that he loved her.
Oh,
so
what a story.
She called off the wedding.
Holy cow.
To everybody's consternation, and married him several months later.
Wow.
And they lived happily ever after. And I've been over 17 times to stay with them on summer vacations, and all their kids have been over to visit me.
That's wonderful.
So that's a great story.
That's really neat. Wow. Wow. So the war has completed.
Yeah, so when I left there, it was really hard because I'd been so happy to think of going back to the front again. But on the way, it was in May, and the war ended, on the 8th of May. So when I did get back to my outfit, they were in Czechoslovakia on occupation duty. And it was a lovely little village way out in the country where the people all loved us. And especially the little boys would just follow us everywhere, every day. But then when the final lines were drawn up, Czechoslovakia was in the Russian zone, so we had to leave. I remember this Saturday morning, we were all packed in our trucks, and the Russians came. There was much saluting and laughing, and then we took off, and the people of the village all weeping, and I'm sure they had it pretty hard after that.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
We went to Austria, to a lovely place, and then were there until I got to come home in December. I was at sea on Christmas and got home in January 1946.
Wow.
And home, weeping for joy.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. Good to see the family?
Yeah.
All right, so you're home.
I'm home.
At what point does your discernment, or do you start feeling a call to the priesthood?
Well, I don't know yet. Then I went to college, and then, I thought I was preparing to be a French teacher. I thought I could never have that. I was very shy. I thought I could never stand up and conduct services in front of people. But the rector, recognized my vocation. He was a wonderful man, and he packed me into his car and took me to the seminary in Philadelphia, registered me. Then when I started, right away I knew it was the right thing. So was there.
The name of that school was EDS?
No. The Philadelphia Divinity School.
PDS, yeah. Philadelphia Divinity School.
Yeah.
That put out many good priests, from my understanding, for a long time. So you are in seminary at the Philadelphia Divinity School, and how did you find? For me, seminary was a little bit of, especially because my family was with me, and financially it was very difficult. It was very much a wilderness. It was kind of like both a thin place, like where you feel really close to heaven and really close to God because of the life of prayer, but also a little bit of a wilderness experience at the same time because of the difficulties and that sort of thing. What was your experience in seminary?
It wasn't like that. It was, it was in the middle of Philadelphia. And I really liked it there a lot. Had very good friends. We had this was long before women were ordained, but we did have 3 women preparing to be directors of Christian education. And one was from the Redeemer in Sarasota. She was a very pretty girl that we liked very much. And she just raved and raved about this parish. And I always remembered that.
Is that what brought you here?
Then I have cousins who bought a house over in Holmes Beach.
Wow.
And I visited them once. And then went to the Redeemer.
What was her name? Do you remember?
Parker. George Parker.
George Parker.
He just died at 98, 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So seminary, you complete seminary. You were ordained in 52, correct?
52, yeah.
What was it, October?
No, I was made a deacon in June when seminary ended, and then the priesthood in December.
December of 1952. What feast day were you priested on?
It was on the Ember Day. It was the 18th, I think. It's on different days, of course, so I never know when to celebrate it.
I understand.
But we went by the Ember Days in those days.
Yeah. So, Father, tell me about your first call after seminary.
I was given 2 missions that were about 5 miles apart. And that was, and I loved that, it was fine. All the time, I became a priest associate of the Order of the Holy Cross, which just meant that you lived by a rule of life. And I would go for retreats to the monastery, and was very attracted to that life. And so finally, after 6 years in the parishes, I decided to go and try my vocation at Holy Cross. And the parishes gave me, a big farewell send-off with a purse that enabled me to go to Europe for one last swing. And I ended up staying the whole academic year. I enrolled at the Catholic Institute in Paris, which is like a part of the Sullivan, and a seminary, and took classes in French spirituality, which was great, really great.
That's awesome.
And the seminaries were really, really nice to me, and they seemed really interested in Anglicanism, and they didn't, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I got invited to most of their ordinations. So then I finally came home and entered the novitiate at Holy Cross. Do we have lots of time? So, you're a postulant for 6 months and just wear a black cassock. Then you're clothed as a novice for 2 years and wear a white, I can't think of the name of it, tunicle, I guess.
Okay.
And then after that, you make your junior vows for 2 years, and then are sent to one of the branch houses. So I was sent first to Santa Barbara, which was
classy.
I'll say it was just a beautiful, breathtakingly beautiful place. It was a millionaire's home, and they'd given it to
That's
the
awesome.
order. And so it was mostly a retreat house.
Did you live in the penthouse? Did you live in the penthouse up
It
top?
was all one story.
Oh, okay.
Built around the central courtyard, very large. And we could see all of Santa Barbara and out to sea the Channel Islands and all around the mountains. And like 3 years ago, that was totally destroyed in one of those fires, California fires. But then the second year I was at Sullivan in Tennessee, and there's a mountain called a whole plateau, which people jokingly say belongs to the Episcopal Church. And that's where the University of the South is there, Sewanee, and the seminary that most of the priests down here go to. And there were 3 schools. There was a Sewanee Military Academy and St. Andrew's School for boys. It was just run by the Holy Cross Fathers. And then St. Mary's for girls, run by the Sisters of St. Mary, who had a big convent there.
Wow.
So that was a wonderful, happy time there, too. I need a drink of water. Then I came home, or back to the monastery, and made my, I really didn't want to do the vows. But, I've been there 5 years, and it's really hard to tear yourself away.
Yeah.
And everybody's, I don't know. Now they don't make you do the vows until you really want to. But in those days, you had to do it after 2 years. So I did, and then was sent right away to Liberia, which I hated at first, but learned to really love. The mission was founded in the 1920s. Liberia was founded as a place for freed slaves from America. It was in President Monroe's administration, because the capital was called Monrovia. And then freed slaves. Now, I don't think that very many actually went. And they tended to stay in Monrovia and are still there, really separate from the native people. So the mission was 300 miles inland, and you had to walk to get there in the early days. During World War II, our troops were stationed there, and they built a road that went from the coast out to the border, 300 miles long. It was a dirt road, but at least it was a road. And that came within 8 miles of the mission. So the missionaries built a sort of track out to the road. And we got Land Rovers that would manage this trip. Yeah.
That's fancy.
So, where am I going now? We're in Liberia.
Liberia, yeah.
Oh, so when I went, there was, we flew out. No, I went by ship the first time. Oh, that was wonderful too, on a freighter. The ship was wonderful because you go first class on a freighter. And it stopped, its first port was in Halifax. So I went ashore and went to visit the cathedral there. And the dean gave me old prayer books, so I had morning prayer on the ship. There were 10 passengers, but mostly there were 2 very devout ladies going to one was going to a mission, I think in Ghana, and one was a Liberian woman. Anyway, they came to morning prayer every morning. And we got there. And the mission had, of course, the church, and then we had the schools with the 12 grades, all in just, buildings made of mud blocks with corrugated iron roofs. And we had a hospital with a nurse and a midwife, Liberians. And there had been times when a doctor would be in residence. But when I was there, the doctor came once a month, I claimed. And then we had an agricultural program. The people, the rice was the staple, and they only got 1 crop a year. So near the end, it would be a hungry time. So we introduced a kind of rice that would give them 2 harvests a year, which made a very, very big difference. And one of the most interesting things, the boys all went to bush school. Well, the girls did too, but we didn't really know much about that. But this was run. It would be off in the rainforest in some place where they would stay for at least a month. And it was run by a person called the Landau, who wore a great crocodile mask. It covered his whole head, and then this long snout that would go up and down when he danced. He danced all the time, and revealing a really red mouth and big rows of white teeth. And then he was totally covered in raffia, sort of a gown, with a little boy that with a sort of whisk broom that would keep him brushed so nothing would ever show.
Wow.
Nothing human would ever show. They were kind of like what we think of as witch doctors, except that witch doctors have a bad, and these were not really bad people.
Mm-hmm.
They would appear in the village sometimes and dance and want to have money thrown to them.
Mm.
So in the bush school, the boys learned all the folklore of their tribe, and it was believed that the Landau devoured them and then regurgitated them, and they were born again, and got new names, and they were all cut with knives in a pattern on their backs, and then when this would heal, it would make big welty stars. But they were supposed to be the teeth marks of the Landau who had devoured them. And then when they finally came out, the whole village would be there to greet them, and they would be just covered with mud. And then they would wash the mud off in the river there, and then get new clothes and a new name, and be born again. So we were able to use that very well for that.
Yeah.
We called Lent the Christian bush school.
Wow.
And we had outstations in many surrounding villages, and with a native catechist or teacher, and he would prepare people for baptism. Then they would all come in for intensive preparation during Lent, like in the early church. They would have exorcisms and be anointed with oil and stuff, and then and then at the Easter Vigil, like the first time I was there were 40 baptisms. I thought I would die.
How many did you do? How many did you baptize?
I didn't do any of them. I wasn't the prior did them.
Oh, okay.
I was assisting.
So, your time in Liberia, was there, was it always a time of, obviously there was hard times and stuff, especially with the food, but was there ever any time of like real fear or real danger, or was it always a fairly cordial?
No, it was always, Liberia was never a colony, so never was oppressed by any foreign country. When Europe was grabbing up all of Africa, I think we grabbed this territory and called it Liberia because it was for liberated slaves and in the capital, Monrovia. So they never had been conquered or, what's the word?
Colonized.
Colonized or oppressed anyway. So they were very friendly. I would feel free to go anywhere, any village in Liberia, and not be the least bit afraid.
Wow.
In those days, more than in like a New York City.
I understand that. New York's a dangerous place. Philadelphia was pretty rough too back then, though, right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't think it was so bad. I don't know.
No? So how you come back from overseas, and what happens? What's next?
Oh, well, when I was there, can I tell one more story?
Sure.
We had the Sisters of St. Helena there to do the women's work, because women were always sort of separate from men. It's funny, like boys would go around holding hands, and when we had school dances, boys would dance with boys, the girls with girls. Remember the first dance when a boy came and asked me to dance? But anyway, that was just the way. But where was I going with this? So the sisters came to work with the girls, and the Sister Superior came out for a visit to see how they. She was just a wonderful woman, plump and pleasing, and but also very holy and very sweet. And so she went with some of the schoolgirls to their village just to see what it was like and all. And when you did that, you waited at the edge of the village till someone sent for the chief, and he would come and welcome you and then take you to a house where you could stay. And then they would take you to the bath vents. Everybody took 2 baths a day with hot water. And so every village had 2 big enclosures called bath fences, one for men, one for women. So poor sister they took her to the bath vents, and she said that every woman in the village was there, because they were still wearing a full habit with nothing showing but the face. It was white. But, and every woman was there to see what was going to be underneath. And she said that she could not undress in front of all those women, but she knew she had to do it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, inspired by heaven, she reached in and pulled out her dentures. The women all screamed in terror and ran away.
That's a great story.
So the order, meanwhile, was thinking of withdrawing. They'd been there 50 years and had never gotten a vocation. And they really wanted to go to Ghana, which was more promising. And so, and I wanted to be dispensed. So the bishop said that if I went home and got dispensed, and they went to Ghana, he would call me back to be the priest there in the mission. So I went home and got dispensed, and I'm still waiting to hear from the bishop. But the order did go to Ghana, not as soon as they had thought. So then I took a parish in New Jersey. It was a lovely old place that had been founded in 1789. And I was there for 25 years till I retired.
So what year did you take that parish?
1972.
72, and then you were there for 25 years.
I had to be, well, I was with Holy Cross. They weren't paying into the pension fund, so I had to work the extra years to 72 to get a full pension.
I understand. So
I was
what was the name of the church?
St. John the Evangelist.
St. John the Evangelist.
Jews Landing.
Jews Landing. St. John the Evangelist. What a great name for a church.
Isn't it though? Yeah.
It is. John's my favorite gospel account. How about yours?
I guess it would be John. I never really thought about that. I think I like them all.
Yeah, I do like them all. But there's something about John.
Yeah, I do love all the stories in Luke. Too,
Yeah.
that aren't anywhere else. The prodigal son, the birth stories.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So you were at St. John for 25 years. Tell me a little bit about some of the ministry, some of the highlights of your time at St. John's.
Well, when we did, they had a very, very bad experience with my predecessor. 2 young people in that parish had committed suicide in the time when this was like in the 60s, I guess, when people were with flower children and committing suicide. And anyway, the rector had handled that very badly and upset everybody. Where am I going with this? Oh, and they had dreamed of improving the parish hall. So the first thing, when I was there, we totally remodeled and added to it to make it twice as large. Of course, that's all not very spiritual.
Well, it's a real highlight. I mean, the growth of the physical plant and the ability to grow a physical plant, I think, is evidence of spiritual health in a church.
Oh, when I went, they had communion only on the first and third. So I introduced the Sunday Mass, and we really grew. It was in a growing area. So, I mean, we didn't grow spectacularly, but we got bigger. So the church would be absolutely filled, like this one is, at 10 o'clock. And then I introduced the Saturday night service with about 25 people who come to that, too.
So, Father, tell me, one of the big highlights was building the parish hall in St. John the Evangelist, and was it in Philadelphia?
No, it was over in New Jersey.
In New Jersey, yeah. And the other one was bringing the every Sunday Mass and then the Saturday night Mass. Also, what else? Are there any other real big highlights of your ministry in New Jersey that you want to? Anything that's that really strikes you as something that you remember fondly?
I'm the kind that thinks of it during the night. I'll tell you tomorrow. Yeah, there must be, but I don't know. I just can't think right now.
25 years is a long time to be at a church. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
You must have been well loved by the folks there.
It was. Yeah, I mean,
And you must have loved the folks very much.
They had after I left, they had a bad time. It's so funny because like the search committee called me one day and said they had to fill out all this forms of what they wanted, and they didn't know how to do that. And they said, well, they wrote, well, they wanted somebody like me.
What a nice compliment.
Yeah, that was wonderful. And anyway, they have a new rector right now who's been there about a year and seems to be really liked and is doing very well. And the first thing he did was get me named the rector emeritus, and he called me back and had a big ceremony last summer.
Wow, that's wonderful.
On a Sunday with a lunch and everything. And they put my name on the signboard out front and stuff. I shouldn't be telling all this.
Oh no, it's wonderful. I think this is fantastic. So you're kind of the snowbird.
Yes.
And so when did you start retiring, where you bought a place down here and you started spending more time in Sarasota?
I retired I had to in May 1972 when I was, what is it? It's a certain age.
When you're 72 years old.
Oh, it wasn't.
So it wasn't 72, it was the 80s.
I was 72. It was 97 I retired.
Okay, 97.
Yeah, 97.
And that's when you started coming down to Redeemer and staying in Sarasota?
No, I had been once on a vacation time to visit my cousins. And so then, because I liked it here, I came. Then I came back next winter to visit them and to look around for a place just to buy. And I wanted to be on the island, but I couldn't find anything. I'm so glad now, because I would have been farther away from the Redeemer.
Yeah.
But I just found this really lovely place right on the bay. And started coming here. And, the girl's name was Mabel Mears.
Mabel Mears.
This was 52. I would love to ask if anybody remembered that.
So all of you watching on Facebook, we've got a lot of our old-time Redeemer folks that watch, my mother-in-law included, who might remember Mabel Mears from Church of the Redeemer, and I think maybe Jackie Bodecker or Marcia Devitt may remember too.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we'll
they
check.
wouldn't be that old.
Well, they might have been kids back then.
Surely not. I'm winning points.
So you come to Redeemer, and Father Fred would have been the rector.
Oh, yeah.
And so when did he ask you to start being adjunct clergy and helping out here and there?
Oh, very soon. He took me to,
He knows a good priest when he meets one.
well, I don't know about that. But he asked everybody to do that. Anyway, I remember he asked me, he took me to lunch and asked me what I would like to do. And I said right away that I would like to visit nursing homes, because when you're the parish priest, you sort of go rushing through looking for your one person where everybody else is kind of reaching out. So I thought I would like to do that. And so he put me under Father Saunders, whom I like so much. And,
I was very fond of Father Saunders too. He's a great man.
we got along very well.
Yeah.
And like in those days, there would be like 10 people over at the county home, what's it called, up on Orange Avenue.
I'm not sure.
Oh,
The Pines?
no, it's,
They could Google it.
yeah.
The county home in Orange Avenue.
It's, a lot of people were there then.
Yeah.
There don't seem to be anybody there. No.
No, I don't think we visit there anymore.
No. But, so I would do that, and lots of the nursing homes.
And you pick up daily masses here and there and help out?
Eventually. Then I remember one week, there was some other affair that everybody had to go to, and so they made me do or invited me to do the daily mass. And then from then on, I started doing them.
I have one more question for you.
I love that.
Yeah, we missed having you at our daily
I
masses.
really miss doing that.
Yeah, well, if you ever want to do it again and we're past all this COVID stuff, you let me know and we'll get you going. I have one question for you. And it's for the people that are watching. If you could give any advice, sage wisdom from a wise and loving priest, what would your advice be to a teenager growing up today?
Well, first of all, that's a very hard question.
It is.
Would you know how to say it? I don't know. You would just hope that they would certainly not get into drugs or smoking or drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And you would hope they would go to church and
Go to church. Trust in God.
be part of the church. You have so many wonderful young people here.
We do.
And I just wonder what happens to them though when they leave or go off to college and there won't be anything like this anywhere else, will there?
Well, you know, a lot of our young people have found really nice churches where they live, and
There are,
I'm in touch with a lot of them, and I know they go to church on a regular basis, which warms my heart to incredible extents, and it is wonderful. What about a young priest? What advice would you give to a young priest or someone who's entertaining ordination?
This is very unfair.
Oh, I'm asking you the hard questions.
Yeah, because I don't think I'm the type that can answer questions like that. I don't, but it would be all the obvious things that you should.
That's good.
Go to church and. For some reason, I got into like meditation. When I was I guess I just loved going to church. Even when I was in high school, we had a wonderful woman in our parish who came to mass every day, and she was her husband was an officer in the army, and she was a great, a real woman who drank and balanced her glass on her knees, but also was very, very devout, an associate of the Sisters of St. Helena, who were in Philadelphia then, and got me to going to the convent there to visit Sullivan, reading, and all, that the whole spiritual life appealed to me a lot. Here I'm talking about me instead of.
That's okay. Well, Father Sullivan, this has been really interesting, really entertaining, and I've been blessed by knowing you, and I'm even more blessed by getting to know you better. And so I am thrilled that you were able to do this today, and I look forward to seeing you on our daily masses and in church on Sunday at some point when this is all we're all through it. So I hope everyone enjoyed this, and Father Sullivan, thank you so much, and God bless you.
And God bless you, Father. Thank you so much for asking me. I'm very fond of you. I think you're very naughty, but I like you anyway.
My mom would say the same. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.